On today's episode of Titus and Tate, we are once again living in a world where the number one team in the country, Tate, is the Purdue Boilermakers.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
But are they the
How?
best? But are they the best team? Is the question that people are asking. The question Purdue fans are asking is why is it every time we get ranked number one,
Mhm.
the whole country wants to say that can't be right. Who's actually number one?
Right.
It happened with UConn. When Purdue was last number one, everyone said UConn is better than Purdue. UConn has taken a nosedive on their season. So now Purdue's number one again, and we're saying, are we sure it's not Alabama?
Yeah, Purdue fans are saying throw out all the numbers, look at the wins and losses, and then they're
Yeah.
also like, look at these numbers that say we
But
are the
also
best
don't look
team.
at Charleston's record because
Right.
if we're just looking at wins and losses, Charleston should be number one.
Right.
So look
Only
at
lost
look at
the number one team in the country.
look at the wins and losses to a point, but then also look at but then start also
look away.
factoring
But
some
look
other
away.
stuff. But
Right.
don't factor in too much stuff because then you might start talking yourself into Alabama. So factor in the right stuff and make sure we're number one. Anyway, Purdue's number one. So congratulations. Hang another banner this year. That's two banners they put up this year. And
I'm fired up for them.
Yeah.
And I have nothing but nice things to say about Purdue, for the record.
Also, Houston and Kansas both losing at home. That's what set up Purdue becoming the first or becoming the new number one. First time the top two teams lose at home, Tate, in back-to-back days. So there's your college basketball.
I think
stat of
that's
the
Big
weekend.
Ten stat of the week.
Yeah.
That is, I don't know who's looking up these stats, but I apologize to them. That is not a fun job.
Arizona protects their home court against UCLA. Not a beautiful game. I would not call this a.
In the words of Manti Te'o, far from it. Far from it.
Speaking of West Coast basketball, part of your Pac-12 update is LMU. Since we last talked the LMU Lions, a program that are near and dear to our hearts. It's closest Division I school to my house.
Right.
You're a booster, I think, technically.
That's how we got to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Shout out to LMU, the Lions.
Big win over Gonzaga. Might talk about that a little bit. And of course, Tate, Mike Brey announces his retirement. We have not done a show. I think he announced like right after we got done recording. So we have to touch on that because that is a man who is a legend around these parts. And we certainly have to spend some time talking about that. So
who would have thought that a Notre Dame coach would be so beloved by everyone in basketball?
It's crazy.
That says something about Mike Brey.
It says a lot. I have a confession too. So that's a little tease. I have a confession that I'm ready to share with our listeners. I need to get off my chest, and I think today's the day I'm going to do it. So
is it about championship DNA?
I did save Ohio State basketball. I'm glad you brought that up. Maybe we'll talk about that. Absolutely loaded show. All that coming up at first.
Woody Durham.
All right, let's start with Mike Brey, right?
Right.
I think
this is the biggest story in college basketball.
I think so. And we got our resident Notre Dame alum, Tyler, who fills in for Jim from time to time. Jim is here today. Jim's just sitting over there in the other side of the room without a microphone in front of him. And we
giving us the middle finger.
Yeah, we kicked him out of his chair and put Tyler in because Tyler's made some appearances on the show. He's a Notre Dame guy, so we're gonna have him join the discussion.
He's our Notre Dame correspondent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Brey announces he's going to retire at the end of the year. My read on it, Tate, when I first saw it, was that this felt more like a forced firing. That then Mike Brey said, "You know what? That's not the worst thing in the world." You know what I mean? Like I don't think Mike Brey woke up one morning and said, "I think I'm ready to retire." I think Jack Swarbrick went to him and said, "Mike, are we sure? Like this season is not it, Mike." This is like he's doing to Mike Brey what Syracuse fans have been trying to do to Jim Boeheim for years and years and years. And he said, "We kind of suck now, Mike. Are we sure your heart's even in this? Yada yada yada." And then Mike Brey was like, "Great point, Jack. I don't think it is. I think I'm ready."
Right.
That's kind of how I feel like it went down.
23 years, and in his most recent press conference after the Florida State game, Mike Brey goes in. He says, our leaders on this team, they're accountable for themselves. They take ownership of themselves, but I've done a horrible job. It's my fault. It was the greatest Fall Guy speech I've heard in a while. But as I was hearing it, I said, that's a man that has come to terms with the fact that it's been 23 great years. What a ride. What a great ride with the Irish. But get me out of here. This is an Irish exit. I want to leave on top. And then I want to maybe move on and find something else. Because I think Mike Brey, I don't know if he's done yet, but I think the tenure at Notre Dame, this is the perfect time to let it go. And don't get fired. You know what I mean? Go out on top. You're the winningest coach in Notre Dame history.
And by out on top, we mean above
Right.
only Louisville.
One win in the ACC. One win in the ACC.
We made almost last.
But
in the
also
ACC,
Virginia Tech only has one win in the ACC.
That's true.
And they're ahead of Clemson in the net. So make that make sense. Make that make sense. I don't blame Mike Brey, and I feel like it's the right time.
Tyler, your thoughts the moment you see the news that Mike Brey's retiring, what was your initial thought? Like good, bad, indifferent?
Well, I wasn't too surprised based on how the season's been going so far, but it's sad. I mean, I'm 26. He's been the coach for 23 years. So all memories I have of Notre Dame basketball, he's been the head guy leading the way. And there's been some really, really fun times during that stretch. Like I've said before, you guys always say I'm a Mike Brey hater. It's far from the truth.
Far from it.
Far from it.
I was a student during both Elite Eight runs, and it was awesome, man. And watching him on the sidelines, like his energy is infectious, and it's been awesome to run. It's been an awesome run, but it's probably time, especially after how this season has gone so far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there were exactly sky high expectations for Notre Dame this season, but still, in spite of that,
9 and
I
10.
think of the meme.
1 and 7 in ACC play.
Our expectations were low,
But my God.
But my God, how did we get here? Yeah, Mike Brey, as you said at the top, Tate, is for him to be the head coach of Notre Dame, and for him to have such strong ties to Duke and still be one of the most likable. I can't think of two institutions in college sports that are just like hate factories, like Notre Dame and Duke, right?
Right.
I mean, is that not the right way to describe? And this man has.
If you went on Twitter and you saw someone's bio and they were like Notre Dame football, Duke basketball, you're like, this might be the worst person in America. And it turns out it's Mike Brey.
Dick Vitale.
Potential coaching candidate.
That man is Dick Vitale. Yeah.
Dickie V back.
So for him to have his professional, because you know, if you really follow college basketball, you know that he was a coach at Delaware. I think most people know him as like the guy because they know him as the Notre Dame coach, obviously, but then you think about like where did he come before that? I feel like he does more, or maybe it just gets more publicized, that he'll do more stuff where he talks about Coach K or like his time at Duke, or
Right.
you know, like remind people he was, you know, on the bench for some of those teams, to where like those are the associations, are Duke and Notre Dame, and for that to be like the two brands that this man has worn for 30 years of his life and still be one of the top 5 most likable guys in the sport is insane. And it just speaks to how awesome he is. It makes you wonder, like, if he would have coached at Delaware his whole career, how likable he would have been.
I mean, and he got the Fighting Hens to a couple NCAA tournaments. You know, he's a good coach. He came from DeMatha, right, with Morgan Wooten. And if you're in that tree of coaches and players, you're coming from a great spot. And I mean, let's be honest. The reason why he went to Duke and the reason why he took that job is because Coach K was like, I want the DeMatha recruits.
Yeah.
So he basically used Mike Brey, and then Mike Brey's such a good guy. He's like, I still will give credit to Coach
I
K.
grew up in Indiana as a non-Catholic, which is to say I hated Notre Dame. It's split down the line. If you're a Catholic kid in Indiana, you love Notre Dame. If you're not, you're like, you're either IU or Purdue, pretty much. And I hated everything about Notre Dame. I hated the elitism that Notre Dame people had. I hated that they were stuck in the past celebrating the 80s, whereas I was more of an Indiana Hoosiers fan, Tate, and the Hoosiers definitely did not do that, whereas Notre Dame was like, we won all these titles in the 80s. I was like, that's disgusting. Who cares?
But also, look at our banners.
Go Hoosiers, look at those banners. No, I really did. Like, I think I hated Notre Dame before I ever even knew what, like, college sports hatred was. And then Mike Brey's hired as the head basketball coach in Notre Dame, and a guy by the name of Chris Thomas, who was Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana in 2001, played at Pike High School in Indianapolis. He commits to Notre Dame in 2001. And this is right on the heels of Bob Knight getting fired. And that's not to say that like every single kid that was Mr. Basketball in Indiana was going to play for the Hoosiers, but that's how my brain took it. Was like, if you're the guys who, like, my understanding, and it was obviously like just brainwashing by my father, but like my understanding was all the best guys, if you're Mr. Basketball in Indiana and you are of a certain level, you go play for Bob Knight. And the guys who didn't, I always thought just like weren't good enough. It was like, yeah, they won Mr. Basketball.
Or
but,
there
like,
was
he
something.
wasn't-
There was always something.
Yeah.
Some reason why.
Yeah, or like there's some.
Why
or-
is John Wall not playing in North Carolina?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right. It's too close. The reason the reason the Mr. Basketballs didn't want to go to Indiana is because they wanted to stay close to home.
Right.
But that's too close. So anyway, Chris Thomas in 2001, I remember watching Chris Thomas because I was 14 when Chris Thomas graduated high school, and I was super into Indiana high school basketball, and he was like, he was an absolute legend in Indianapolis. And I remember, like Jason Gardner's a good example. Jason Gardner's from Indy. He commits to Arizona. Same sort of thinking, like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Like, what's going on? But I started watching Arizona basketball because of Jason Gardner, and I was like, I'm going to follow these Indiana guys wherever they go. He goes to Arizona, start watching him. Chris Thomas was the confusing one, though, because Jason Gardner was coming on the heels of Arizona winning the 97 title.
Right.
And Lute Olson's got like a thing going out there. And I was like, I kind of get it. Like, Knight's on the tail end of his career, and Jason Gardner wanted to take a big swing and go to Arizona. That makes sense to me. When Chris Thomas committed to Mike Brey in 2001, I remember being just so confused as to how and why this could happen. Like, what the hell was this man thinking? I was absolutely baffled. But what I did do after that, Tate, is I started watching a lot of Notre Dame basketball. And that was my long-winded way of saying that was my introduction point to Mike Brey. That was also my introduction point to not hating Notre Dame as a brand, because I started watching Chris Thomas, and they never were. I'm trying to remember. I think they had like one good team in his 4 years, if I remember right. Brey's first year was Troy Murphy's last year, but then Chris Thomas came after that. But I remembered, like they had like one good year, but oh my God, they were so fun. And like Chris Thomas was so fun, and I was like, this is actually, I can't hate this team. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And Luke Herringody was my age. He went to Luke Zeller was Mr. Basketball. He ended up going to Notre Dame. Then Luke Herringody committed. They had some fun teams. Anyway, Notre Dame, like, very quickly, everything I thought I knew about like what Notre Dame represents as an institution, Mike Brey stepped in and said, we probably still represent those things, but we're gonna have fun doing it. You know, like we don't take ourselves super seriously. And I don't know. It's as I look back on it, that's a huge upset to me, because I thought as a child I was just gonna hate Notre Dame my whole life, but Mike Brey made me not hate them.
Yeah, Mike Brey is the definition of you give him lemons, he made lemonade.
Yeah.
And he comes on the heels of Matt Doherty, who was National Coach of the Year, but also, as we know, a very
That's right. I
aggressive
forgot about that.
guy. You know what I mean? Not a very likable, affable dude at any level, you know, for the most part. So he comes in for that. You lose a National Coach of the Year. He goes to North Carolina. People are like, I'm not sure about this guy. We'll see. And then he becomes beloved, and he wins. It felt like the entire time, even when they were in the Big East, like Notre Dame's going to win 20 games.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of was the standard, and he's going to be likable. He's going to have a guy like Luke Herringody. When it was, I remember the Maui Invitational, it was Herringody versus Hansbrough, and it was this whole showdown, and Notre Dame was a lot of fun. And then even when Ben Hansbrough went to Notre Dame, you know, because I had watched Tyler. I was obviously a fan of Tyler. Then his brother's at Notre Dame. I'm like, okay, now I'm weirdly pulling for a Duke guy, you know, at Notre Dame. What is happening? Like, Mike Brey had so many of those check yourself moments. He was the Big East Coach of the Year 3 times, I believe. He comes to the ACC, new conference. You're saying, get this guy out of here. He's an outsider. All of a sudden, he's the most likable ACC coach out of nowhere. It's like every single time he got dealt a bad hand, Mike Brey delivered a good situation or a good outcome. And then right now, obviously, this class that's been there for 6 years, it feels like 10 years, it hasn't worked out, right? Every single year, you're like, well, maybe this is the year that it clicks. And that's why I feel a little bit bad for him, because I felt like he was waiting for that last good ride, that last good run, and then it would be over.
Yeah.
And he's not going to get that.
Yeah.
Maybe he does in the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
But in general, that's the only thing I don't like about the Mike Brey finale. It's because every other time it seemed to work out. Even with Under Armour. You're like, Under Armour is a bad draw, right? You don't want to be sponsored by Under Armour in a Nike Adidas arms race. But Mike Brey said, I love Under Armour. In fact, I'll go down to Baltimore all the time.
Notre Dame, I'm looking at the schedule. Notre Dame plays Clemson the last game of the year, the regular season, at Clemson. What if that's the Mike Brey gets carried off the court on, like, Clemson goes into that game tied for the ACC on the regular season standings. If they win, they clinch share the title, and the place is buzzing, and Notre Dame pulls off the upset to finish their third win in the ACC, say. And they just throw Mike Brey on their shoulders and dump Gatorade on him and celebrate. And Clemson, like, they, I don't know, makes sense to me. That's as close as you're gonna get to like a walk off, you know, Mike Brey moment that we want.
It's kind of like Albert Pujols, you know. I wanted to get back in the batter's box one more time, and maybe he hits a home run, right? That's all we need. And he's top 7 in wins in current coaches that are active. You know, when you look at the list, and I was saying this to you before we even started recording. in college basketball, as we're losing these legends and these legendary coaches who have the autonomy to be around for 23 years. We don't live in that kind of world anymore. I'm not sure that Notre Dame will ever have a coach be there for 23 seasons with how volatile things are and how quickly things can, flip on its head for these coaches. So to lose Mike Brey, who's only behind the Bill Selfs, Randy Bennett's, Mark Few, Tom Izzo, Jim Boeheim, you're losing a legend in the coaching ranks too. And that's always sad because he's such a good character.
Tyler, how do you think it went down? Do you think my assessment is correct? Do you think Mike Brey asked for this? Who do you think said the words retirement first? Like the Notre Dame side, the administration side, one of the players, one of the assistant coaches? Or do you think it was Brey himself that's like, I'm too old for this shit?
I think it was a mutual breakup.
Yeah.
I would say that whoever probably said first, it was probably Jack Swarbrick. He was probably like, all right, what's next here?
Yeah.
How do we rebound from this pretty horrific season? Because I think that's the most surprising part about this team is they're so bad, but they're so experienced. And it goes against everything that Mike Brey has done in his career because usually like he's great at player development. They'd get old, like thinking Tib Abramitis was a great story like that. Got a lot better as his time went on. That just did not happen this year, to say the least. So now you look at the construction of the roster looking forward, and it's not great, which then makes the job a little bit less appealing to future coaches. But I think there was probably a point there where they realized they had to sever ties or move in a different direction going forward.
Yeah, Swarbrick was like, Mike, we're not moving on. I just want to know what your plan is to fix this because it's going to be a lot of hard work to get it back. And Mike was like, "Is hard work?
Yeah,
I don't want hard work."
He said, "I think I'm not."
It's like you're going to do the hard work, right?
Get
Mike
out
was
of
like,
here.
"I'm not."
Yeah,
great coach, not great recruiter, and it's kind of important in the whole coaching thing now.
He had the Magic Johnson. I'm not going to be here.
Do we think he's done? He's done, right?
I think he'd be great
like,
on TV.
What does he do next?
He'd be awesome on TV.
I think he's awesome on TV. I think if he wants to just like go open like a jet ski rental place on a beach somewhere, that makes sense to me too.
He's got a place in Delaware.
I could see him just. Do you think he's gonna stay in South Bend? Do you think he's gonna like be the Roy Williams of Notre Dame basketball? And
he said he wanted to be involved in some capacity next season. I don't really know what that means or what that entails, but I think he wants to be around the program. Now, if I were him, I'd want to get the hell out of South Bend. That's 23 years is a long time. I could barely stomach 4. So hope he gets some time away, get some time.
Well, no wonder Notre Dame has a problem with recruiting. You got a proud alum right here sitting down. He's like I'm gonna hate in my 4 years.
Dude, like this morning, there's a player on the football team. His mom is posting tweets like, if you've seen my son's car, it was stolen last night. It's like, oh my God.
Oh,
South Bend just continues to embarrass itself. But I don't think it's anything harsh to say. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think it's much of a secret at this point.
But the gold dome's cool, and the
the dome is cool.
Right, the history's amazing. Look at the banners.
So where does Notre Dame go from here? Who?
I think there's an obvious candidate.
Brad Stevens.
We call him, make sure he says no. There's a mid-major coach, Catholic guy, said he wants to stay at a private school. It's Rick Pitino. You got to start here.
Tyler gets the show.
This is why Tyler.
But I got another one for you too. This week, I think Notre Dame would be doing a little bit of a favor for this guy. Stock is low on him. His fan base hates him. People going to his games, begging him to leave. Again, Notre Dame would be sort of extending an olive branch.
Don't say it.
John Calipari.
Oh. I thought you were going to say Chris Holtman because I saw CBS put out.
I did see that too.
Their list of candidates. Number 1 on the list was Chris Holtman. Number 1 Tate. It wasn't like a maybe throw his name on here to get some clicks and because if you're going to do that, if number 1 is bold because I think like the play I would have done is put Holt at like 5 or 6. You can put his picture in the headline. I don't know, but it felt a little.
I think that's I would call that profiling. And I say that because it does feel with the Notre Dame job, there's this sort of unspoken conversation about the coach needs to understand being at a football school. You know what I mean? Or be able to play that game.
Yeah.
And Chris Holtman, they look at what Ohio State's doing. They're like, pretty good on the football side.
I'm pretty sure the thing Holt probably hates most about the job is that it's a football school.
Right.
I mean, I haven't talked to him about this specifically, but my read on the situation is like, if I was him, I would probably hate that all these football fans pop up in January, Google our record, and then yell at me for not being better when they have no idea what the hell our team is or how it was constructed.
Well, I'll give them the baseball jersey fans. You know what I mean? I think they mean well. I think it's the football to go after.
Well, how would you compare the expectations for Ohio State basketball to Notre Dame? Because I feel like Notre Dame basketball fans have a very realistic outlook on it, and I think that's why Brey excelled.
I think Notre Dame has better 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 expectation, better
Yeah.
like a better like you guys can handle like a down season better
Right.
than Ohio
Like a
State probably
realistic
could.
understanding of the
yeah.
program's limitations and all that.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think, like, just as a casual Notre Dame basketball fan, I would say, like, every year you should be competitive for the tournament. Like, even in a
Yeah.
down year, you should be around, like, in the mix a little bit. Try to get one big upset at home every year, which was a staple of the Brey
Yeah.
program. Like, every year they knock off a top 5 team. And then, once every 4 years or so, like, Sweet 16 run. I mean, those Elite 8 runs were so fun, and like, the first one, I don't wanna say it was, like, the expectation, but that was a really, really good Notre Dame team with Jerry and Grant,
What year is
Connaughton,
that?
August.
2015? 14.
It was 2014, 2015.
15 and
15.
16.
Yeah, and then
are
the
Elite Eight
following
runs.
year
15 when you had the shot in the corner to beat Kentucky, right? In the Elite 8.
Yeah,
It
Jerry
was
and Grant,
Yeah, and he shot it.
Connaughton, August,
it too
young
straight.
Bonzie Colson.
Right.
He
Like,
shot
that
it like
team was
too hard, but it
stacked.
was like online, and he airballed it long. I think if I remember right, or short,
Yeah,
or something
it
like
was
And they won the ACC tournament that year.
that. Yeah.
right, and they beat
That
Duke.
team was awesome.
And that's another
God,
thing
that was a
about Brey
fun
and the
team.
Duke connection. There's no one who loved beating Duke
Yeah.
more than Mike Brey. And
Yeah.
even when Notre Dame was moving over to the ACC, I think there was a little bit of animosity between the two because I think Coach K didn't love the idea of Notre Dame having like this open marriage with the ACC, and I guess pushed back on it a little bit. Brey caught wind of that, was pretty pissed. Like, I don't know the exact specifics there, but then they knock him out in the ACC tournament. That was awesome. In my freshman year, I went to the game when they had Jaleel Okafor. Notre Dame won on a Steve Esterier corner 3 late.
Oh,
And that was
yeah,
like
yeah.
one of the most fun times I've had as a student there.
That was
So a
your
lot of
freshman
great
year?
memories. Yeah.
Oh, so you were there for you were.
Oh, I
you-
was there
yeah.
for like the peak of
Was
Notre Dame basketball.
basketball was better than football?
Yeah, I mean,
like the-
2016 football went 4 and
Basketball
8. It
school.
was abysmal.
Yeah, you were a basketball. school
That's
when
what
you
I've
were
been
there.
saying when you
Yeah.
guys are like, you hate Mike.
You like
like
Mike
it's
Brey.
the opposite.
Right.
I'm glad we got to this
Um,
point.
Is there a feeling that you have, Tyler? Remember when the students did boo Mike Brey? Do you look back on that and you blame them? You're like, you did this. You guys brought this moment
Yeah.
in time.
Do you have shame as an alum? Are you like, I can't believe the kids these days ran this man out of town? Are
They
you gonna
should
be
have
one
to
of those
wear
guys?
like something that says like I cheered
Or-
to fire Mike
I
Brey.
think you should hate the next coach. Just like
Mm.
one of those deals where like the next coach takes over, just punch him in the face. Like however your version of that is. Like when a new prisoner comes in, you just have to like set the tone. Like let him know he's not your real dad. Whoever the next coach is. Never
I don't know if I want
support
to do
him.
that to Rick
Right.
Pitino.
Right.
Never support him. Say
I'd be
Mike Brey
scared.
I can't believe we ran Mike Brey out of town. I have a name for you. It probably is not popping up on maybe it is. I don't know. But this one jumped out to me as making the most sense. And you're not going to get super excited about it, but I promise if you do your homework, Tyler, you'll be excited about it. Micah Shrewsbury, Penn State.
Yeah,
Mm.
he's
He's
a
the guy.
popular candidate.
That is the guy.
I thought he would be number one
That's
on
the
those
guy.
type of lists.
No,
yeah.
he is.
that is far and away the number one candidate to me.
The funniest thing though is Shrewsbury's on a lot of candidate lists, and you've seen a lot of articles like top candidates to replace Mike Brey at Notre Dame. I laughed out loud. I saw one, and I know what they were doing. I don't want to call that guy out, but it was he made Monty Williams the thumbnail.
Oh
as
my
if, like he
God.
was a top option, and I cracked up because I was thinking like, yes, I understand all the Notre Dame connections, and all that, but there is just no way he's
Oh
going
my
from the
God.
Phoenix
Honestly,
Suns
though,
to Notre Dame. But the
make the
fact that he
call.
was
Make
the
the call,
featured,
Make the call.
he was the
Yeah.
featured coach in that article. Like I was laughing out loud. That was so funny.
You have my promise on this, Tyler. I will never mock. If you text me and you're like, I think we have a shot at Brad Stevens, I will entertain it. Or Rick Pitino or Billy Donovan, Jay Wright, you name it, I will support it.
I like Jay Wright.
I will do whatever I can with the memes. I've made the Pitino meme. That's for Louisville. You can steal that. You can use that. That's a free. That's open domain. Anyone can use that.
Right.
But yeah, man, I think it's fun. Like this is part of the problem with coaching carousels this day and age is that like they just hire within and hire like boring ass guys, and we miss the days of throw Monty Williams' hat in the ring, dude. Why not?
Right.
It's fun to talk about.
Make him say
It's
no.
fun. Make him say no.
In my head, I'm just thinking about who's
Mick
calling.
Cronin.
Who's calling Notre Dame though? Like who's interested in Notre
Well,
Dame?
if
Who's
there's an
making the
NBA
phone call
guy,
to them?
maybe Chris Quinn.
Chris Quinn.
I've seen that name.
Chris Quinn.
floated.
Chris Quinn is like the if you're following the trend of hiring the former player type deal, the Juwan Howard, Penny Hardaway, Patrick Ewing type situation, that would be Chris Quinn, right? He's the
Monty Williams. But if he says no, then
Yeah.
probably Chris
Yeah,
Quinn.
but would Quinn want to leave the Heat? Like he's got a good thing going there. And then
Yeah.
another NBA guy, Sean Sweeney.
That's
he's
my
an
guy.
assistant on the Mavs.
That's my guy.
He's been thrown
Okay.
out there a bit.
yeah.
But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they
It's
want to
Shrewsbury,
go in
dude.
the.
It's Shrewsbury.
Hey,
It's
I'd
Micah
be cool with
Shrewsbury.
that.
Because a few reasons. Number one, Shrewsbury's an Indiana guy. He's from Indianapolis. if I remember right, he coached in South Bend, like IU South Bend.
IUSB, yeah.
He was coaching there for a while. He went to high school at Cathedral, which is what I think was literally
Indianapolis Cathedral?
Indianapolis Cathedral is so much Notre Dame that I think they were literally sued by Notre Dame because they stole. They're the Cathedral Fighting Irish.
Yeah.
Their football team wears gold helmets. Their logo is like the punching Irishman. It's
Right.
Notre Dame's Irish logo. That's where he went to high school. This man is fighting Irish through and through. And then the most important thing is that Notre Dame basketball, win, lose, or draw. Guess you can't draw really in basketball, but win or lose.
Yes, you can. When you go to overtime, it's a draw.
True.
Remember we decided.
That's true. The Mike Brey era, I will remember as just being super fun. And like you knew that you could watch Notre Dame play. And if you're a neutral fan, it would be a fun game for the most part, like especially when they were good. And I challenge someone out there to find like a more fun team that's like not actually national title or Final Four caliber good than Penn State is under Michael Shrewsbury this year. They are so fun. Like all they do is just jack threes and they make all of them. And then they play no defense. And it's incredible. That will like
That
if you
sounds like
love Mike
Notre
Brey
Dame
basketball, oh my God. If you love Mike Brey basketball, do your home watch Penn State for me, Tyler. Just
All
watch
right.
like the next like 2
I'll
or 3
I'll
Penn
bring
State
back a
games.
comprehensive
Watch
scouting
Andrew
report.
Funk and Seth Lundy and Jalen Pickett, and they're so fun. It's annoying as hell if you're a Big Ten team playing them because like Indiana played at Penn State not too long ago, and Penn State was hitting everything, and all the IU fans were like, "We suck." And I was watching like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be like high on Indiana if I watched this game, but at the same time, like this is what Penn State will do to you. If they're like hot, they'll make every fan base like walk away thinking we suck. But really, it's just like I don't know, man. They shot like 50 threes and
Yeah.
made 25 of them.
You guys had Brey on the podcast before, right?
We
Right.
did,
A
yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During
you
the
have-
pandemic.
Do you have a favorite Brey moment?
I think like when you think of Brey, it's definitely the Mount Invitational, right? Like that's where your mind goes. Tate, would you say that?
Yeah, I would say that. I think for me, it's when he wore shorts and coached during the pandemic. That was the moment. It was, in Chapel Hill. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But the bravado, the brashness, and just the fact that Mike Brey always seemed like he had an agenda against the establishment a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he was punk rock coach at some level.
Yeah,
so.
so my
Probably
my-
mine.
what I'll remember Mike Brey is like embracing small ball lineups and spreading the floor and like I think Jay Wright probably gets credit for inventing like 4-guard lineups and with the 06 was it the 06 team 05 team the Jay
05
Wright
team.
05 team when Jay Wright was playing 4-guard but it felt like Jay Wright arrived at that via like scientific like experimentation and like I'm smarter than everybody and I crunched the numbers and this is what our programs and it felt like Mike Brey was just like let's throw 4 guards
Right. He's like,
let's
we're going to
just-
play the best five.
we're gonna play Bonzi Colson at center. He's 6'7". Okay, let's ride.
Right.
Like that felt like his
Pat
attitude.
Connaughton at the
And
floor.
I think like
Mm.
that's just my interpretation of it. And they probably both, had the similar lines of thinking of how they got there. But what basically what I'm saying is I know Jay Wright invented small ball in college basketball, but I'm gonna give credit to Mike Brey because that's just what I want to do. That's just how I feel like it was more fun like watching Mike Brey's teams because Jay Wright felt like more scientific and Colin Gillespie backing his ass down. Like it's like, all right, we get it. You're smarter than everybody. Mike Brey was like, we're gonna go out there, we're gonna just run around and shoot 3. Matt Farrell, put the ball in your hands, go make me some
Right.
plays. Let's play some basketball, boys. Break.
Some would
That
say
was-
there would be no Steph Curry without Mike Brey.
without Matt
Mm.
Farrell, without Ben Hansborough.
Mhm. Yeah. just
Kyle
keep-
McElharney going
Yeah.
way back.
let's just keep throwing out, Mike Brey did
Who's your-
this, Mike Brey did that.
Top, we'll say 3, and then we can move on because we got other stuff to talk about. But top 3 Brey era Notre Dame players.
I loved Kyle McElharney. 'Cause
Really?
When he was pulling up from way out, and that was before that was normal, he would shoot from just anywhere on the court. He was great. Bonzi, obviously, and Pat Connaughton.
Yeah, Pat Connaughton.
Pat
Yeah.
Connaughton's dunk against Kentucky, like that
I
whole
still
game.
like Pat Connaughton a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was really good. I can't believe the career he's had in the NBA, but that dunk he had against Kentucky, like that whole game, I was just trying to not get my hopes up because I'm like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And then he had that huge dunk down the lane. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to win. And then we didn't. But for a brief moment there, that was awesome.
I
And,
felt the same way.
yeah.
I was watching.
yeah, it was great, a great run, and those are some really fun times.
One last thing I have to point out: whoever Notre Dame hires will tip the cap. Apparently, Notre Dame is taking the meetings with the Big Ten, taking the meetings with the SEC. They're trying to figure out where they're going to go full time.
Yeah.
So who they hire, I think, says a lot about where they're going to go. So if they take a Shrewsbury or a Fran McCaffrey or a John Beilein, they're going to be a Big Ten team.
John Beilein.
John Beilein's the one that I have. That's who I would call.
Interesting.
With the Pistons now, has gotten that NBA kind of background, knows
That's got
how it works.
that's some Mike Brey basketball too.
Right. John Beilein would be a force in Notre Dame. Like if John Beilein goes to Notre Dame as an ACC guy, you have my attention. But again, I think that they tip their hand as to where they're going to lean, who they bring in. If they bring in like a Chris Quinn or like a Sean Sweeney, I'm thinking to myself SEC. Because that means that they're bringing in NBA guys and NBA talent.
Is Chris Quinn in the Juwan Howard coaching tree coming from the Heat? Are you worried about Chris Quinn?
He's in the Bob McAdoo coaching tree.
Is he going to strike a man? Are you worried about this? That's a good point. I think Notre Dame to the Big Ten is you hire Michael Shrewsbury, Gene Smith's the new Big Ten commissioner, who's a Notre Dame alum, and it's a done deal. There you go, Notre Dame in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
Michael Shrewsbury.
And I saw Gene Smith was talking to Fran McCaffrey on Saturday, and then there were some Ohio State people being like, oh no, I don't want this. Stop this.
Yeah, all the Ohio State people are like, fire Chris Holtman. Then they see Gene talking to Fran. They're like, never mind.
Take that back.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks for
the Notre Dame insight. Should we take a break? And let's just do a reset. Let's take a break, and then we'll talk about some of these games that are happening over the weekend.
Bang.
All right, we're back. Let's talk a little bit about like more current, more relevant stuff than Mike Brey, I guess, Tate. Kansas and Houston both lose back-to-back days. First time in history that top two lose at home in back-to-back days when it's cold outside, but the action was heating up inside. Which one, like, my thoughts on it were Kansas gets absolutely smoked by TCU at home.
Right.
But weirdly, I'm not panicking about Kansas because Kansas, I've thought Kansas is good, obviously, and I've thought at times like Kansas might have the best resume and is deserving of a 1 seed and yada yada yada. I've never felt like Kansas, like basically watching Kansas against TCU, I didn't walk away feeling like I've learned something about this team. They just play like I've said it all year. They're hilarious because their style of play is such that they just like, it almost feels like chaos at times. It almost feels like they're disorganized at times. But then at the same time, Bill Self is such a great coach that you're like, I can't actually sit down and say that like he doesn't know what he's doing because he clearly does, and it's working. And Jalen Wilson's awesome, and they have so much talent. But then other times, it feels like an NBA game. So basically, I walked away from the TCU game saying, this is who I thought Kansas was. Like they're going to have some stinkers along. I think it's going to happen again. I think the bottom's going to quote unquote fall out of Kansas again at some point this season. But it's still, when March rolls around, I'm going to look at Kansas in a bracket and be like, yeah, they could beat the hell out of every single one of these teams. So I don't know. Do you disagree? Are you panicking about Kansas after they lose to Kansas State on the road and then follow that up by losing, what was it, 23 at home to TCU?
83-60 to lose to TCU was their worst loss at home in, oh my God, how long? 2 years. Right. And
they got smoked by Kentucky at home last year and still won the national championship.
What I'm saying.
So,
and there's a certain level when you talk about Bill Self. Bill Self is, I think, on his own level as far as tiers of college coaches and the programs they have running and rolling right now. I mean, all the NCAA, FBI stuff, throw it to the side. As far as the results that are happening from the top all the way down to the talent that is on the court, Bill Self has got it figured out. So they did this last year to Kentucky, like you said. They did this to Texas when we saw Texas in the Asheville-Maui Invitational, and we thought they might be the best team in the country when they had Courtney Ramey and Kai Jones and Greg Brown and all this talent. So it made a lot of sense when Texas blew them out. Okay, add it all up, whatever. And the funniest part about that is that Jalen Wilson has played in all three of those games. He played in Kentucky last year, he played in the Texas game, and he played in the TCU game. And I think in every single one of those situations, you could brush it off because they obviously bounced back. It was a make shots kind of day. It was a Bill Self, okay, we didn't show up today. I throw you in the pool, sink or swim, and he just let it be. He was like, okay, we're going to get blown out today. That's what it is. These guys are going to learn from it. We're going to be better for it, and it is what it is. I mean, if you're panicking over this, then you haven't been paying attention to Kansas.
To Kansas basketball. And I guess like that's the point I would say to, if you're a fan of another team that has Final Four aspirations and, you know, people are hitting the panic button or saying, Tennessee's a good example. Tennessee losing to Kentucky. I don't know if it's panic button, but it was like, man, this leaves a terrible taste in my mouth. I know it's one game, but like, yikes, this is, I don't know. I'm rethinking some things. And if you're a Tennessee fan, you're listening to me say that, and you're saying, how come when we lose to Kentucky at home in a close game, that now you're off of us, but when Kansas gets blown out at home, you're saying, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'll tell you why. Kansas is the pretty much runs the exact same they ran last year with a similar roster and a similar approach to the game, and they won the national championship last year. So I don't know. I'm sorry. I saw it happen last year. I'm not going to panic. Kansas could be down like 20 at halftime in the NCAA tournament, and I would say let's see where this thing goes. Let's just wait and see. Let's see what, and maybe they're down. Like I'm never going to give up on them until they're out. Which isn't to say that I actually do think that they are the best team in the country or one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country, Tate. But I don't know. I acknowledge that the TCU game happened. If it keeps happening, if this they enter the tournament with 5 or 6 different losses like this, it's a different story. But yeah, one game where a good TCU team, by the way, TCU is hilarious too because TCU has lost 3 of 5. And the 2 teams they beat were Kansas and Kansas State.
Right. Make it make sense. That's this entire season of college basketball. You look at the results, you try to play it out, you try to see who's good, who's in, who's out, but it's just changing. I mean, even 2 weeks ago, Indiana's dead to rights. And now after this weekend, everyone's like, how is Indiana not a top 25 team? Right? That is what we're working under. And that is why the AP poll in general has been
farcical.
It's been an absolute joke.
How does Purdue it feels like every time Purdue takes the court, a Big Ten team is taking them to the brink. It comes down
literally
to
every single time.
time.
Even the Maryland game was kind of a blowout, and then it wasn't.
And then Maryland at the end technically has a shot at the buzzer to tie the game.
And by technically, you mean literally?
Literally. I mean, technically, literally. I don't know. Choose your word. They did. It happened. I saw it. Michigan State has Purdue on the ropes, and Edey hits the game winner. Ohio State, obviously, Lawyer hits it. Nebraska takes it. This keeps happening over and over in Big Ten play with Purdue that they are escaping. Rutgers literally beats Purdue. I also saw that happen. And yet you wake up this morning and Purdue is the number 1 team in the country, and 0 other Big Ten teams are ranked. How does that make any sense? Wouldn't you think if Purdue is the best team in the country, are all these teams that are taking them to the brink, shouldn't one of them be in the top 25?
Not according to the AP.
And if that's not if that's not how you think about it, then wouldn't you say wow, Purdue has a lot of close calls against teams that aren't even ranked? Shouldn't they be not number 1?
They're probably not number 1.
Yeah, but no, somehow both exist, and then we just accept it.
Yeah,
I think
both things can be true.
I think what's happening, especially with the Big Ten and maybe the ACC too, you'd certainly know better than I would, because it's happening with the Big 12, but at a different level. It's happening at the Big 12, but for good. And then the Big Ten gets the bad part of this, where with the Big Ten right now, everything is so results oriented that, and as it should be, it's, one team wins, one team loses. Ultimately, that's what you're trying to do, is win these games. Nobody pays any attention to the process whatsoever of who's playing. And this is what was driving me nuts as an Ohio State fan, watching Ohio State lose all these close games, 5 games in a row, is that I'm screaming at the TV we're not that bad. But then also, if you're not that bad, why are you losing 5 games in a row?
Right.
But then we're close, but then close doesn't get you anything. You got to win the damn games, yada, yada, yada. This keeps happening in the Big Ten, where, like you said, a team like Indiana starts thinking maybe they're good, but then they lose to a Penn State, and you're like, oh, we suck now. We're going to suck. But now Indiana's won a few games in a row, and now they think they're
3
better.
in a row. Yep.
Meanwhile, Michigan State was feeling pretty good about themselves. Michigan State loses at Indiana, who's unranked. And now Michigan State fans are like, we suck. How do we lose to an unranked team? Basically, what I'm saying is every single game, and I don't know, I've yet to be proven wrong about this, but every single basketball game, I have worked under the assumption one team's going to win, one team's going to lose, Tate. And what's happening with the Big Ten, it feels like, is that every single game, someone walks away having lost to an unranked team, and then that fan base says, we must suck because we just lost to an unranked team. And then there's going to, what I'm saying is Purdue might be the only ranked Big Ten, because Indiana's going to lose to, who does Indiana even have next? They're going to lose to a team that's not bad, but because they're unranked, they're not going to. And the exact opposite is happening with the Big 12. And I think that was the point I was trying to make to Fanta, was I know the Big 12 is the best league in the country. I'm not arguing otherwise. I'm not saying the Big 10 should be considered the best. That's not the point of this at all. It's just, once all these teams get ranked high, and then they start beating each other, nobody really falls, because you're looking at a TCU that loses 3 out of 5, but they beat Kansas and Kansas State, and for that reason they're going to stay ranked high, and it's just a cyclical thing that you get lost in this the cyclical algorithm you've built for yourself, or if they keep playing top 10 teams and keep beating top 10 teams, and they're clearly a top 10 team,
right?
And then when they lose to another top 10 team, that means there's then I'm looking at this like this is kind of crazy, and is this telling us anything? And it's all very confusing. I think that's what college basketball has become. Is I think we have like we go into this conference play with like these set ideas of what all these conferences are, and I don't think they actually are. And I think that's happening with the ACC too. I think the ACC is better than people think the ACC is.
Right.
But
Imagine if you put Chicago State's analytics into the ACC formula or whatever. Like they're one of the worst 340 teams, maybe worst team we've ever seen as far as the numbers say. And then you look at the conference ratings based on Kim Pom or one of these places, and they're like, look how disastrous the ACC is. And it's like, well, there's one team that's really pulling down the wagon here, right? That's kind of where that's coming from. But the context is maybe taken out of the equation. And then also when you beat up on each other and no one's ranked, it just looks even worse. But when you have 5 teams in the top 12 of the AP and you only have 10 teams in your conference, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
So every time that you play, you kind of have a chance to make a name for yourself. I guess what I'm saying is
I don't think the gap is that big, but because it's just the poll inertia, and it's just interesting how the narratives start to form, build on that. And that's why I weirdly, as a guy who likes Big Ten basketball or like thinks the Big Ten isn't, I fight against like the rest of the country's thoughts on the Big Ten. I'm excited about this tournament because I think the Big Ten's in a good spot having a little chip on the shoulder, and because I think there's a ton of great basketball being played in the Big Ten. It's just, the Indiana thing's hilarious because Indiana has that 3-game losing streak. They lose to Iowa by 2 on the road. This is when Iowa's coming off of losing to Eastern Illinois without Chris Murray. And I don't know if Connor McCaffrey played, which might actually help Iowa. Honestly, I haven't even played, but Indiana loses to Iowa. Chris Murray's back, and it's like the circumstances of that game was like some questionable call, whatever. It's a game they should have won, but you lose by 2 to ultimately is not a bad Iowa team. Then they follow that up. They lose at home to Northwestern by 1. But again, they're down 2 starters. But at this point, Indiana fans are like, we suck. Meanwhile, if you like take a deep breath, you look at it, you say you lost the 2 on the road against a good Iowa team. This is one of the best Northwestern teams in the history of Northwestern basketball. You lose by 1 at home without 2 of your starters. And then you go to Penn State, and Penn State has just a barrage of threes and is hitting everything. And again, Penn State's not a bad team. And then Indiana fans walk away from that saying, we suck. We're not even going to make the tournament. This is a failure of a year. Look up a week and a half later, and they're like, oh my God, we're back, and we're going to beat Purdue in a couple weeks, and we're the best, And that's how like every team has gone to the Big Ten. And I think that's just what college basketball is right now. Is just everyone is as good as everyone else, but we're just riding this inertia of like thoughts we had about teams.
And everyone wants what they think to be proven out. So everyone is trying. When you already had a preconceived notion about what it is, like the coming into the year, the ACC sucks and North Carolina is overrated. You've checked your box. You know what I mean? You watch it, you say, my box has been checked. I move forward. My thoughts are there. Done. Whatever. And it doesn't really take into account the reality of the situation. I think the ACC last year was much maligned, obviously, but they had 3 teams in the Elite 8. So as much as it's the worst year in ACC history, I'm watching the tournament, and I'm watching Auburn play Miami, and I say, Miami looks like the better basketball team. I hate to say it. They have the better guards. They have the better defense. They win the game. And then all the same people that are arguing all these things, they say, well, it's a tournament. It's a single elimination. All the factors that we had into this, throw it out. And it's like, what do you mean throw it out? You threw it in my face. Throw it out? What are you talking about? So that'll drive you crazy. I think the most impressive stat when I look at the Big Ten to me is Purdue has not lost on the road. They're 6-0 on the road. So when I look at Purdue, that is the one thing that I have in the back of my mind where I'm like, Purdue's legit because they can win in tough environments, in close games, on the road. I like that for a title-type team. I like that for a Final Four-type team. And a lot of the times with these conferences, especially the ACC and the Big Ten, they're beating up on each other. They win at home, lose on the road, right? It's one of those things where it's a lot of 500 basketball, but they're good teams.
Yeah.
Other than the outliers. Like, there's a couple of outliers that are right there in your face, like a Minnesota, or a Louisville.
Yeah.
And then the one time that Minnesota doesn't win a game, we have external factors that are, you know what I mean? There's all these, you could nitpick it and explain it out. But like you said, everyone's a lot closer than they are.
I guess that's my ultimate point, because I'm not trying to argue that like the Big Ten deserves more ranked teams, although it kind of does break my brain that Purdue's ranked number 1 and then no other team in the Big Ten is ranked.
Right. Right.
Because like if Purdue if these are impressive wins that should put Purdue at number 1, then shouldn't those other teams?
Look at the net rankings, and that'll break your brain.
Yeah.
That'll literally break your brain.
Well, yeah, I get my ultimate point is just that like this stuff is closer than yeah, I guess like the rankings. It's something that I've figured out, a long time ago. I just have to keep reminding myself that they ultimately don't matter. But
At all.
it just feels like the AP poll. If you just simulate, if the season lasted like 4 more months than it does, by the time we entered the tournament, the top 25 would be all Big East and Big 12 teams because it's just like a cyclical thing of them playing each other over and over and over. And I do think those leagues are good. I don't mean to say that they're not good. They're awesome. I like a lot of teams in both leagues. Um, it's just fascinating how this stuff shakes out and how like narratives form and all that kind of thing. So that's all. I will say this though, because Purdue, it is interesting with the new Purdue Alabama debate, and it feels very familiar because we had the Purdue UConn debate not too
Mhm.
long ago, and Purdue won that. I think
In a
it's pretty clear
landslide.
that Purdue won that one going away, and Purdue fans are now sitting here saying, "Why is it that everyone wants to talk themselves out of Purdue?" Um, I would say that like for me, I would say Alabama is probably playing better than Purdue, like based on what my eye test, what I am seeing with my own eyes. Um, but I think the reason why is because Purdue, as good as Purdue has been all season, it does feel like the exact same team we saw earlier in the season from Purdue is the exact same team we're seeing now, and it's going to be the exact same team we see in March. And it's like that doesn't excite people, So
Mhm.
like I think when you're talking about like who the best team is, people get excited by the teams that are playing better and are hot and all that sort of thing. And Purdue has just been steady, consistent across the board. Um, and I think that's where we've arrived with these sorts of debates. And UConn, meanwhile, was like blowing teams out by 20 and is like a rocket ship to the moon. And then they ran out of gas and the rocket came tumbling back to earth. And I
And
think Alabama is that rocket right now.
I agree with that.
And Purdue is just in orbit around. Yeah, Purdue will like my astronaut analogy. So
Right. They're still in orbit.
Purdue is in orbit, and Alabama is a rocket to the moon right
Mhm.
now.
See, Purdue fans, you're in space.
There you go.
Congratulations.
There
You're
you go.
back. You're back to where you belong. The thing about Alabama and UConn, like you said before, Alabama is winning every single SEC game by double digits.
Yeah,
So when you watch Alabama, it's aesthetically pleasing because you're like, wow, these guys, they're on a different level than who thhere playing right now. They're absolutely blistering these teams
they
in the
have a
same way
higher
that UConn
ceiling
was.
too.
Yeah, exactly.
They have the higher, like they pretty
Right.
clearly have a higher ceiling than Purdue, and I guess that's where you start. That's where the debates start happening. Is just that's
And,
I
and and what's the real crux of what we're saying? When it comes down to it, when we get to March, Purdue is going to have to look at Braden Smith, who I think is a really good player, and say you're gonna help take us to the promised land. You and Fletcher Lawyer are going to take us to the promised land. Two really good players. By junior year, I think they can do it. But when I look at Alabama, I see Mark Sears, who can do it.
see Brandon Miller, and I'm
I
like,
see
this
Brandon
man's
Miller,
ready for this right now.
who I
Yeah,
mean, this is first team All American in front of us. I see Noah Clowney, who's only getting better. And
yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, wow, the wheels start turning." My biggest concern with Purdue is the guard play, and I think that Sears with maybe a Quinterly or like a Jaden Bradley, whoever it is, I think I could trust that more in March than I can two freshmen, and I would love for them to prove me wrong because that would be a feat in and of itself. Like if Purdue and these two freshmen get redemption for St. Peter's, right?
That'd
Like
be
they
sick.
weren't even
Yeah,
part of this team, but they come in and they change the whole narrative. That would be amazing. I think that would be fun to watch. That would be exhilarating. I'm
yeah.
not pulling against it. I'm just saying, in my mind, that is what's keeping me from saying I'm all in
I
on
guess
Purdue.
like I guess yeah that the people that are trying to talk themselves out of Purdue aren't doing it because they're. I mean, some people are. My father is, but like most people aren't doing it because they're uh laughing at the idea of Purdue having a national title team and saying because the some of Gene Katie's teams couldn't get to the Final Four, that means that this team can't. Because there are people that do that, Tate. There are people that judge programs based on their jerseys, and they
Mm.
say we can't trust Purdue because remember when Glenn Robinson never did anything in the NCAA tournament. So what? Remember Robbie Hunt, and it's like those guys aren't on this team. So like, why are we pretending like that has any bearing on this? But at the same time, some of it does
Mm.
seem to work that way. I don't know. I don't know why it does.
I mean, history
So
repeats
kind of
itself,
history does
right?
repeat it.
At some level,
It is
until it
weird.
doesn't.
It is kind of weird that like I think you put the North Carolina team last year in Purdue jerseys. They probably do lose in the second round to
Right.
Baylor.
Right.
But like anyway, um,
There's some psychology at play in your mind when you
but
think you're destined to do something.
it's not just that. It's that if Purdue was to win the national title, they would do it in a way that has literally never happened before, ever. We've never ever, and I think That's all people are saying is like the precedent has never been set. We've never seen a team that has no NBA players on it win a national championship.
Right.
That can't happen. Or it can. Maybe it can. But in order for it to happen, it's got to be something we've not only have we never seen it, I'm not sure we've ever gotten close. I'd have to go back and actually look that up, but I can't imagine it's ever been close that I don't know who on this Purdue team is going to play a second of NBA basketball.
Right. And I know we're in orbit right now, but we can't hear these Purdue fans that are yelling because we're in space, but they're silent.
So that's all I would
say. They're yelling
like,
Zach Edey will probably get a chance in the NBA just because of size.
So
but also,
if you're a Purdue fan, you're like, why do people keep talking themselves? Every time we're number one, people want to take it from us. Why is that? That's why it is. It's because it doesn't compute. It doesn't. You can't look at this team and say, I mean, Zach Edey is the best player in the country, but like you look at the idea of this team winning a national championship, and you're saying if this is to happen, this is going to be groundbreaking, and it's got to be something we've never seen before. And Purdue fans are like, yeah, exactly. That's what makes it special. And everyone else is like, I can't see it. I just can't. I don't see it in my brain. Having said all that, Tate, are you ready for my confession? I have a confession I promised at the top that I would share with everybody.
Please.
I need a swig of water because this is a doozy.
This is good.
Yeah, this is a doozy. I was back in the Midwest this weekend. I was watching the Ohio State-Iowa game up close, and I was with a lot of family and friends this weekend. And I was reminded of what matters most to me in my life. It was a great trip. It just like reset the system, and I was reminded of the things I care about most. And one of the things I walked away from this weekend is this, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm officially willing, Tate, to cheer for the Purdue Boilermakers to win a national championship.
Whoa.
I'm officially willing. Now, here are some conditions. Number one, only if Ohio State and Indiana are already out of the tournament. They have to be out of the tournament.
Okay.
I will not be.
Right.
I will cheer for the upset before. Like if Ohio State's still in, then I'm cheering for whoever I'm cheering. I'm not making any pride, But the second Ohio State and Indiana are out, I'm willing to entertain it. Also, only if Purdue doesn't engage in like scumbaggery, I guess, for lack of a better term, between now and March. Like if Smith and Lawyer start getting a little too cocky, if Zach Edey becomes a villain, if he like punches a guy,
right,
then I reserve the right to walk all this back. Okay. If Matt Painter gets too big for his britches, like if Matt Painter's doing interviews and he's speaking on behalf of like all of college basketball and he's like trying to make himself the face of college basketball just because you have the number one ranked team right now, then I might walk it back. Okay. And then the last thing is if like another feel good story emerges where, knock on wood, God forbid this happens, but like a DeMar Hamlin type deal, not even that, but like just something of that caliber where it's like all of America is now rooting for a certain team because like
Kevin Ware situation.
A Kevin Ware.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a better way of putting it. A Kevin Ware. And then we're like, all right, now we're rooting for Louisville. If that happens and then Purdue goes up against that team, then I probably have to cheer for the feel good story, right? Otherwise,
I love these caveats.
Otherwise, I'm willing to cheer for Purdue. And I mean, I just realized like not cheering for Purdue in the national championship makes me a hypocrite. And I just, my father taught me two things in life, and number one, it was don't cheer for Purdue basketball, but number two, don't be a hypocrite. Now I'm at a crossroads, Tate.
Right. You're like, who do where do I listen?
Because this team has 6 guys from Indiana in the rotation, 2 Mr. Basketballs. I want the Big Ten to win a title, ultimately to shut the haters up. I'm not a conference pride guy, but I feel like the hands are starting to get tied at this point where
you need it.
The Big Ten does
needs
need
something.
It. Yeah. I want to go back.
The most embarrassing thing that's happening in the Big Ten is mentioning Maryland as the last title team. That has to stop.
So I don't want to be a guy who cheers for conference rivals to win. I don't want to be an SEC fan. That's disgusting to me. But also at the same time, the walls have been closing in on Big Ten fans for so long that it's like, I don't know. At a certain point, we'll do whatever we have to do to survive this war on Big Ten basketball, right? So
you're willing to lose the battle to Purdue.
If that's what it takes.
You're willing to lose the banners argument that Coach Titus has preached for so many years for the sake of the Big Ten.
That's one of the reasons I think I'm willing to cheer for Purdue as well, is because the positive that would come out of it is that the IU-Purdue rivalry might be the best in college basketball in the next 5-10 years. Like it immediately sets up Indiana-Purdue to be the best rivalry in college basketball immediately.
Well,
right?
Because Indiana at that point, it's an arms race to a title. I mean, it's whatever it takes. If we have to cheat, we have to cheat. Like Indiana, throw everything out, do what needs to be done.
And then the other two things is like I do generally root for programs to get over the hump. I root for coaches. This is what made Virginia's title so fun. It's what made Baylor's title so fun. It's what made Jay Wright's first title so fun.
Gonzaga's
title that they almost had was so fun. All of like that is I do root for programs and coaches that I feel like have earned it. That have I generally don't root for the teams that come out of nowhere and get hot like for one March run, like and have a 101-year-old nun on the sideline that's clapping them on. I don't root for those stories. I root for the ones that have earned it through like being consistently great programs year after year after year and just can't break through, you know? And that's Purdue, right?
I think it's Purdue.
And then ultimately I root for the mold to be broken, and this team would do that, as we said, like having no NBA players, having like one big dude that they rely so much on. None of it makes any sense. If they were to win a national title, it would completely break like what you're supposed to think about basketball in 2023. So for all those reasons, I just wanted to say I'm officially willing to cheer for Purdue to win a national championship.
I think Purdue winning would be fun for the brand of college basketball, you know, because it doesn't make any sense, and NBA scouts won't be able to make sense of it. And they're looking around and they're like, is Fletcher Lawyer a top 20 pick? Is he Joe Wieskamp 2.0?
Yeah.
You know? They start doing these shades of comps and we lose our minds. I mean, that would be fun. I think as you were saying that, the other face, you know, you were talking about getting over the hump and all those things. The face that keeps coming in my mind as I think about this is Kelvin Sampson at Houston, and we have an Indiana, like it should have been Indiana playing Purdue, but it's Kelvin Sampson. He's coaching against Purdue. And then Indiana fans are like, do I have to pull for Kelvin Sampson? Like that would break their brain. I think that if that were to happen, Coach Titus would have to come on the show to tell us what to do. You know, give us a guide to watching Purdue play Houston. Because Sampson versus Matt Painter, they're both trying to get over the hump. They're both have done everything to be national title type coaches. Obviously, that would be fun. I like that scenario.
That's a funny scenario. Indiana fans would cheer for Sampson and then pretend like
they didn't.
They did. They would pretend like it's their title.
Right. Hang the banner.
Tom Brady winning in Tampa.
That should have been us.
That should have been.
If these were their current rules, we would have Kelvin Sampson.
I'm worried about Houston though.
Are you? Temple was due a big win, by the way. Temple. I like Temple's team. I really do. I think that they're a good, solid team. They should have beat Memphis. So I just felt like they were due a win, and Houston could not throw it in the ocean in this game.
I'm worried about Houston because I think Houston's lost their intensity a little bit. I think Houston's lost the edge. I think what made Houston good was that they were disrespected and they were chip on the shoulder guys and they're undersized guys. And for the most part, I know they got at least one McDonald's All-American, right, Walker? But for the most part, like the roster has been through the years, like dudes that are unheralded, and that's been the staple of the program. And I'm a little worried, Tate, that being ranked number one and being told that you guys it's national title or bust in a lot of ways for this team is too much, and they're losing the edge. I'm a little worried about that. Now I will say, I will give every national championship caliber team. I will give you one stinker. Like I think that's the issue with Tennessee is that they use their stinker on Colorado, you know. And then and then I felt like even though the Kentucky game was kind of close and Kentucky's a different team now and they're sort of turning the corner, it felt like that was their second stinker. And I'm like, you only get one stinker,
right?
And you had your stinker, and now I'm a little worried.
In conference that like I will give you a conference loss. You know, that's just inevitable, right? That's their first loss in conference.
This is the worst Houston basketball's looked in a long, long time.
Right.
Not even just this year, like a few years. I know they only lost by one. They had a shot at the end to technically win the game. And I guess if that shot goes down, we just say, whew, that was close, but that's Houston. That's what they do. They win games, you know, and we pretend like there's nothing wrong. But they played horrendous. I'll give you one stinker under this caveat. They got to beat out of everybody now. This has to like wake them up and get the edge back, because that's the reason you talk yourself into Houston. Like Houston doesn't have a team full of NBA players. Houston doesn't have a team full of like Alabama. I talked about that game when they lost to Alabama. It was like shocking if you pause the game and you look at the 5 guys that Alabama has on the floor versus the 5 guys Houston has on the floor. Alabama's got like 2 or 3 inches at every position and longer arms and like just looks like a different caliber of athlete. What makes Houston tough is that mindset and that attitude and that approach. And they got to lock in now. I need to see Houston lock in now, and hopefully this is a wake up call because you get one stinker from me, and I'm not giving up yet, but I'm worried in that regard that they've lost their edge.
I like the discipline of Houston in the fact that they're going to set the tone of whoever the tone of the game of whoever they play. So even in this game, it was ugly, but they played on Houston's terms.
Yeah,
and I feel like in the tournament, that's how Houston kind of operates. They're like, okay, you're going to play. We'll muck it up.
Yeah,
Houston's not afraid of it,
That's
and
true.
I respect the discipline. The thing about Alabama that I worry about is that they get into one of these muck games and shots aren't going in, and they're just they tune out. You know, they're like,
but then I think if you're Bama in that scenario, you're saying we're counting on Brandon Miller to just
be better, win us the game,
just be Carmelo. You know,
right?
Like just go
get us the win,
us the win.
Right.
And I think that's a fair plan B, honestly. To have a guy like that and say, please.
It might be plan A.
It might be plan A some game. Honestly. You're not wrong about that.
Nice win for Temple, though, because when I was a kid, and obviously you too, I mean, Temple used to be a force in basketball. It used to be a lot of fun to talk about. I mean, the John Chaney, John Calipari, those were great times. That was a great snapshot. And obviously, you know, seeing Temple, they're part of the Big Five in Philadelphia, seeing them get a win like this. First time they beat the number one team since 2000.
Houston has Central Florida on Wednesday at UCF.
Mm-hmm.
Last time they played, if you remember, it was a close game the whole game. I think Houston ended up winning by 4 or 5, somewhere around there, 6. That's what I'm saying. Is like you lose the Temple, that it happens. Even the best teams will lose. You know, like we just said, Kansas lost at home to Kentucky. That was their stinker. They lost some other games last year, but that was like the real one where you're like, this was an absolute stinker. This was a stinker against Temple. Now you lock in. You have a tough game next, like one of the tougher games you have left on your schedule, other than probably Memphis on the road or Memphis at home. Let's see what you're made of. Let's see, like they not even. I don't even care if you win the game. I want to see them beat the hell out of Central Florida. I need to see Houston lock back in. Say that was an anomaly. That was our one stinker. We're back. We're locked in as the calendar turns to February, and I trust that they will. But yeah, that game was horrendous. That was horrendous Houston basketball.
Right. It was ugly to watch. It was not fun to watch. And I will say the last game of the regular season for Houston is at Memphis. So if you're if you're a betting man, or if you're a fan of college basketball, if you're getting primed for the tournament and you want to see where Houston is presently, watch that Memphis game. I think that's going to tell you a lot because Memphis is going to be a really tough team in the tournament. I want to make a list of the teams that are just
tough outs.
Yeah. Just totally Marquette, Memphis, North Carolina. There's going to be some teams where NC State maybe could be one of those, depending on that. You just don't want to play those guys. Creighton.
Seriously.
You don't want to play these guys, especially if you're a 1-2 seed. You get a little tight. They're a 7 seed. I mean,
dude, you know who's the tough out that let me pull up some bracketologies. Let me see where they're because we have not talked a lot about this team, and I think they just made their first appearance in the AP poll this week. Maybe they were there last week. St. Mary's. You seen any St. Mary's?
I mean,
dude,
we need more talking.
The bracket matrix says they're a 6 seed right now, which feels like a tough out.
That's a tough out.
That's a tough out. The St. Mary's team is awesome.
Right.
They are legit. They have a fun stretch coming up. The reason I'm putting them on everyone's radar, they are at BYU, they're at home versus San Francisco, then they're at home versus Gonzaga, and then they're at LMU Tate. That's their next 4 games. I think they're at BYU this week though. The kid Mahaney he's from California, I think, but he's a freshman. Like St. Mary's, if I remember, they had like a 3-game losing streak at one point during the season, but their best player is a freshman who kind of came out of nowhere. Logan Johnson, who's a name that if you've paid any attention to St. Mary's basketball or watched them play even one game, you would remember this guy, Logan Johnson. But he was the guy that I thought was like going to carry this team this year. Not the case. They've kind of like slowly figured out who they are. I think Mahaney was coming off the bench to start the season, and now he's might be leading them in scoring. I haven't looked it up recently.
I mean, he had 20 points in the last game against Santa Clara.
But they can shoot and they can play defense, and I've always found those are 2 of the more important things to be able to do on a basketball court if you're trying to win games. So,
And they have one of the best coaches in college basketball.
Yeah.
One of the winningest coaches in college basketball, and Randy Bennett. So when you talk about the tournament, and it comes down to coaching and things like that, when we're talking about college basketball, that's a good guy to have in your back pocket. And if you're Mark Few and we got him off the record and you're saying, are you concerned about that kind of stranglehold you have on your conference in the WCC? Yes.
yeah.
And it's because of him. It's Randy Bennett standing right there.
Yeah, they had the 3-game losing streak. Washington, New Mexico, Houston. Houston's obviously a very good team.
New Mexico's a good
New
team.
Mexico's a good team. Washington, not as much, but in overtime, 4 points. They lost by 4, they lost by 4, they lost by 5, and they lost by 2. Those are their 4 losses.
And one of them was a draw, not a loss.
Yeah, so I'm not saying
Right.
St. Mary's should be considered like national title good or anything, but
Tough out.
that's a tough out right there. That team is going to be tough. And
It'd be
Indiana
fun if we
fans,
put a list together of tough outs when we
Yeah.
get to like 60 teams.
Indiana fans do not need to be reminded of what St. Mary's is capable of in the NCAA tournament.
All right.
After last year.
Unfortunately, that's in my head every time I look at St. Mary's. I can't get that
Yeah.
game out of my head because it was over before it even really started. So that's a good call. It's a good team.
What else? Do we have anything else?
I think we should mention UCLA, Arizona, because we had Fanta.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
Apologies to Arizona fans. I'll be honest, I didn't really watch the game because I was in Columbus.
Well, I want to hear about
It was
that
at the exact
too.
same time.
Well, let's talk about that. But
Yeah.
quickly, I just want to mention Arizona plays UCLA. The big, I think we said with Fanta that we thought Arizona would win this game at home, but it wasn't an inspiring win by any means. I'm glad that Arizona won just for the kind of keep things together. But UCLA, they're better on the boards. I think they're more disciplined defensively. I think that when you look at
You
those
thought the
two
better
teams,
team lost?
right?
Whoa.
Shocking. You hate to see it. But, I mean, it's a tough road trip. You play Arizona State, who's also a really good team. Then you play Arizona. It was nice for Arizona to get the check mark of the win, but I didn't come away from that game and saying, oh, maybe I was a little bit wrong. I think, Arizona might be better than UCLA. I still feel good about UCLA.
Yeah. I mean, Arizona's a little more desperate to have won.
They needed that win.
I didn't really watch, so I'm not gonna,
It was
talk
ugly.
from a place of
It was ugly.
like I saw what happened or anything. But I did see Kirk Reese didn't have a good game. That's encouraging. I said Arizona never wins. If Kirk Reese has a bad game, they never win. They never, and when they lose, he never plays well. So at least like this is a positive thing that they beat a top 5 team when Kirk Reese played like garbage.
Mick
That's
Cronin was a character and a half in this game. I mean, he was on one, so it was fun.
The other thing I noticed, David Singleton. I watched the Arizona State UCLA game on Thursday, and Singleton played out of his mind. I think he was 7 for 10, 21 points. That guy's one of my. You will not find a bigger David Singleton fan on planet Earth than me. And I'm watching that game like this is why I'm the president of the David Singleton fan club right here, Arizona State. Every time I watch this man, he does not miss. He will not miss. And then the Ohio State game I was at is on at the exact same time as UCLA Arizona, so I don't watch. Singleton goes 0 for 5, does not score. Makes you think, Tate.
Yeah.
Really makes you think.
It was probably the worst game I've seen from him. And they did a good job. I mean, they were pushing him out, stretching him out. Yeah.
You know what the worst game I've ever seen from him is? Doesn't exist. Never once seen him play bad.
Right.
Never once.
You never seen him miss.
I've never seen him miss. He's literally never missed a shot. Yeah. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
You got shout outs?
Well, can we talk about Ohio State? Can you
okay. Yeah.
Can you just talk about
Well,
there was a lot of fanfare in the building.
There was a lot of fanfare, great crowd. Shout out to the fans for showing up, especially the fans that didn't leave with 5 minutes left. Because boy, were there a lot that all the people that were tweeting fire Holtman and this team's done and we suck and all that. I think those are the same people that were grabbing their coats when we're finally playing well and there's 5 minutes left and they're like, all right, time to get the hell out of here. But no, it was a good crowd, good environment. I hadn't been in the shot in like 5 years, I want to say 6 years, something like that. It hit me like walking back in, like, man, it's been forever since I've been to a game here. And yeah, I a lot of people were making a big deal about like, I don't know, you're hearing people say, Mark, you saved the program. Like, Mark, where would we be without you? Like, Mark, I think some people were tossing out the H word, like hero, and I was getting a little uncomfortable by it. Like, I kind of understand why they were saying these things, but I don't know. I didn't think it was a big deal, Tate. I mean, I said what was going to happen, and everyone was pretending to be surprised, like we were going to win. I took my championship DNA. I gave the boys the speech. I sat right behind the scores table. It was hilarious because I got into. I was sitting so close, and that place is for even when there's a good crowd, it does get quiet. Like you've been to a game there, I think, or no? Have you not?
No, I haven't.
You never have?
I mean, I've been in the shop, but not for a game.
You think the Dean Dome's bad, dude? Like the shot, it's just so big. It's just like the noise, just like goes up to the top and then like
the Dean Dome mentality is basically like, give me something to clap for.
Yeah,
right. Which is like, I've already seen James Worthy and Michael Jordan, so do something. Yeah, dude. Garrison Brooks, I'm not impressed. Yeah.
So it can be pretty quiet, even when there's a good crowd, and even when we're playing well, it can be quiet at times. And I'm sitting right behind the scores table, but not behind the bench. If I was behind the bench, it feels a little more personal, like I'm on the team and I got to like watch what I'm saying because I don't want to. But I was behind the scores table, and this was the night after Shannon Sharp had his
dust up
kerfuffle against the Lakers. So I'm sitting behind, and the game tips off, and it hits me right away that I have no backup plan. Like I haven't thought through like what happens if we actually don't win.
Right.
Because I was like, I'm so sure that we're gonna win. We come out pretty flat, and now I'm like actually a little shook as I'm like, is there a chance we might lose this game? And then I had another Coors Light, and I said, no, we're not losing this game. And I started talking more, and I got to a point by the time we started going on those runs, I was convincing myself that I was having some sort of impact because I was going banana, and it wasn't just like yelling at refs or like yelling at a lot of people just like yell at the refs. I was yelling at all of our players every single time they checked in. Every time a guy checked in, this was my go-to was f them up, is what I would say.
Nice. Right. Ain't sweet.
I had nothing else to say. Felix Akbar's checking. I'm like, come on, Felix. Yeah. And he turned around and like, I got you. I got you.
All right, number 34.
And then when guys are coming out of the game, as they're subbing in, the guy coming out, I would just yell good shit.
Yeah.
That seemed to work.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if this is a thing guys still say, but I remember when I was playing basketball, in one-on-one situations, you would yell at the guy, do him. And it just came out. It wasn't something I was consciously thinking, but Bryce Sensabaugh gets one of the pick one of the white dudes on Iowa. There's so many that can't guard anybody, but he gets a one-on-one situation. I forget who it was. And I just stand up and yell, do him, Bryce.
Right.
Immediately one dribble, pump fake, and one jump shot. And I was like, oh my God, am I having an effect on this? And then it just like from there, I just kept,
I think it evolved to cook
him
him when I was coming up. Yeah, it was cook him. Yeah.
Well, I did yell do him, and I got a lot of weird looks from people like, are you suggesting this, man? I was like, I don't know. I just went off of instinct.
You're like, you don't understand championship DNA.
Yeah, this is championship DNA.
That's the vocabulary that champions use.
This is what it takes. You got to yell him up and do him. That's how it works.
You're like Kirby Smart.
No, but I'm Kirby Smart.
Put it all together.
No, and then we got the big win, and then in the locker, I go to the locker room after the game. Owen Spencer, shout out Owen Spencer, a walk-on the team, got a scholarship, Tate.
Nice. Like after the game.
After the game, they gave him a scholarship.
I love that. Those are the best.
Kid hit a halftime or a half-court shot for chicken, I think it was, during one of the timeouts.
Raising Cane's.
So the vibes were all around great. I'm not promising we're going to win every game moving forward. I'm not making any more I'm just saying the program was saved. That's all it was. I was there for one job. It was to beat Iowa, save the program. We do not lose 6 games in a row at Ohio State. I made sure that didn't happen. And where it goes from here, it's anybody's guess. But we beat Iowa. Promises made, promises delivered.
Right. And there's more good news coming because as we're sitting here, LeBron James, famously the father of Bronny James, has released a limited edition college basketball jersey that is now on Nike.com. And it is, I'm showing this to you live, it is a number 6 Ohio State LeBron James jersey that has just dropped exclusively for 30 days. So it goes back to what we have talked about on the show. There is a brand play that is being made. It is right in our face. Bronny James has narrowed down his list of schools to 3 schools. LeBron also came out after that and said that if he called any team in the country, any college in the country, they would take Bronny.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the 3 schools that have offered him. It's about he could go anywhere. But it's the championship DNA landed in Columbus, and I think there's a chance Bronny James might be bringing even more on the way. So just wanted to shout that out.
Thank you,
Good moment.
I did what I could. Again, I'm not a hero. I'm just a man doing a job. I'm just a man that wanted his program back. But if you want to keep calling me a hero, please be my guest.
If Bronny James goes to Ohio State and doesn't use LeBron James's locker that is at Ohio State, I will be very upset. Right? It's already there for him. That's so amazing. You walk in the locker room, it used to be a display, and now Bronny's just like putting his shit in there. Amazing.
Any other shout outs?
I mean, shout out. I mean, this weekend of football was pretty wild. I'm going to be honest with you. I was blown away yesterday by the results, and I want to shout out Joe Burrow. And I saw a lot of people talking about Joe Burrow and how cool he is and everything. And I still am dumbfounded about what I watched. I was so sure that the Bills were going to at least go to the AFC Championship.
I think the Bills were
game.
too. I think everybody was.
So I just want to shout that out because I like when I'm surprised, and I don't really know how to explain it, but. Joe Burrow, you have my respect. I mean, you already did, but kudos to you, man.
I think that's the appeal of the NFL, and I love that about the NFL. I love that about college basketball. Is there's like the older you get and the more sports you watch, you reach a point where it's hard to be surprised anymore.
Right. And then when it's right in your face, you're like, wow.
And that's why a team like Purdue being #1 in the country is like, this is surprising. This is not supposed to. It's not supposed to happen this way. Yeah, it makes it interesting.
Same
with the NFL. You have no idea. Even as there's Final Four teams, I guess like the Chiefs are probably the favorite. I would guess, but I don't know. Is anybody that confident that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl?
Right. I wouldn't be shocked at this point if Purdy wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm like watching this San Francisco team. I'm like, what is this? What is happening? I didn't know that you could win with. But
it's hilarious hearing
Nick Foles broke it though. I think he broke the seal of what's possible. Who can be your quarterback?
It's hilarious. Everybody's saying that Purdy can only throw into the middle of the field, and the Cowboys should take, and the Cowboys are like trying to take that away, and they still can't take.
Right.
That cracks me up.
When Greg Kittle made that catch, the tip drill catch, I was like, okay, game over. Yeah. Those are things that happen in a game. Like R.J. Davis made a little half-court 3 this weekend against NC State when they were down. It's into the shot clock. That goes in. You say, okay, game over. Great. That's what you like to see. So shout out to football. Good entertainment.
Brett Maher. How do you say his name?
I've heard people say it. Terrible. I don't know. I didn't know that that's how you pronounced it.
Mar.
Sure, Mar. Sure.
Mar.
Maher.
That was cracking me up. I was watching the game on the plane and flying back from Columbus, and I have the game like on my iPad, and I think I was like, at one point I was working on like a crossword puzzle just because like my eyes were hurt. I just wanted to mix something up. Like watching the game, I was like, I need to kind of be active, so I. You know how plane rides are. So I did like a little picture-in-picture thing, and I got like the small, the game's on like a little tiny corner of my iPad as I'm working on a crossword puzzle. And when Maher comes out to kick a field goal, I put the pin down, I turn the iPad sideways, and I go full screen on this. I'm like, I've never been. I think that was the only time I did the whole game was when he was kicking field goals. It was like, I got to see what happens next. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then he made it, and I was like, this is awesome. What a story.
I can't wait to see what happens with the Cowboys. Did you see the official account, like the Dallas Cowboys, whatever color check it is these days, tweeted, basically it was Dak Prescott's fault why we lost, and he's 100% accountable. They tweeted that.
It's amazing.
I appreciate the candor. That's what we love to see.
Shout out to LMU. We said it already, but we didn't really talk about it much. Big win at Gonzaga. That was a fun win because you got to see all the bullet points of last time Gonzaga lost at home to LMU. Last time Gonzaga lost to someone other than BYU and St. Mary's. Last time Gonzaga lost at home. Period. Last time Gonzaga. There was one of those losses that it's like it really busted out a lot of the stat nerds and their bullet points.
Right. Again, shout out to the researchers that have to do that because that is not a fun game to play.
32 years, 31 years,
right?
32 years.
I think it was
32 years that LMU wins at Gonzaga.
1991,
the Hank Gathers team,
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Hank Gathers.
There you go. So that was a nice moment for our guy Craig Pittens and the LMU Lions. Love that.
Shout out Trace Jackson Davis too, who's playing out of his mind. I think my All-American team right now, Tate. I think I see Zach Edey's a lock. I would say Brandon Miller's a lock. I would say Drew Timme is probably a lock. I would say Jalen Wilson is probably a lock. And then I think the 5th spot's up for grabs with like Trace Jackson Davis, Jaime Jaquez, Azuolas Tubelis, Oscar Tshiebwe's still in the mix.
I think Baycott's going to be in the mix.
Baycott's in the mix. Yeah,
he might win ACC Player of the Year. Yeah.
There are a lot of guys.
That's the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys that could be that, but I don't know. Trace Jackson Davis is certainly making his case for spot number 5.
Right now, I think I'd put Jaquez in there.
I might too but I didn't watch Saturday. So
he was solid. It's not how Jaime is.
Dude, he didn't play well against Arizona State, and he still played well. He's still that's how he always is. Even when he doesn't play well, he's still
Yeah.
doing everything.
That's to me
Yeah.
why his comp is like a Jimmy Butler type, where you're like, I can't really.
I like that.
Sometimes he annoys me, but sometimes you're like, this guy's unstoppable in the mid range, in the mid post. So shout out to him. I want to shout out Terquavion Smith of NC State. Took a hard shot in the North Carolina game. Leaky Black goes up, ends up getting a flagrant 2, toss from the game. It was a tough play, bang play. Was not a dirty play. I'm happy Terquavion is all good, and I mean, he's a great player. So there was a lot of concern. He goes out in a stretcher. I mean, it was a scary moment. And but anyways, after the fact, he seems to be fine. Kevin Keats says he will get, he will be who he is, and no serious damage. So shout out to him. Great player, and I'm happy that he's not out for the year because it looked very scary, in the moment. So shout out to Terquavion.
Any shout outs, Jim?
No, that's it.
All right.
Jim's over there.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Jim.
I'm back.
Tyler did a good job.
I was in the bathroom.
Shout
Shout out to Tyler.
Right.
We didn't even tell him we were going to do that. I just saw Tyler walk in, and I was like, "We're talking Notre Dame. Sit down, Tyler. Let's hash this out."
And he was ready.
He was ready.
He was just throwing out
Prepared.
Rick Pitino at us.
Yeah.
He took away half the bit.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I want to talk about Rick Pitino, but damn, Tyler, you got it.
Tyler, that's my line. I'm the only one that gets to say Rick Pitino on the show. All right, that's it. See you guys.